Rich Goldberg was with the White House National Security Council. And Rich, thank you for being here today. Good morning to you. Are we looking at the strong possibility of a multi-front war here in the Middle East?
Well, absolutely, Bill, because we've been seeing a multi-front war in the Middle East for over 10 months. Iran has been waging a war, not just from within Iran, but from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen, from the West Bank, from Gaza, and by the way, outside the Middle East for 10 months now. When Iran says it's going to have a direct attack, I think we should believe them. We saw them test the hypothesis that they could escalate in this way back in April. A very large ballistic missile attack on Israel back then, paid no price really for that attack. And so I would expect that we should overestimate what we'll see from Iran in the coming hours.
Rich, this is Jillian. So after Israel assassinated Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh last week inside Iran, there was concern that, number one, Iran would seek then to directly retaliate with a strike against Israel, an attack of some kind. There was also this concern that his death might impact the hostage negotiations, ongoing hostage negotiations in a negative way. He was the sort of chief negotiator, for lack of a better word. The answer to both questions is slowly appearing to become yes, unfortunately, it seems.
I think Israel was sort of up against the wall where they're being told they have to surrender to all the Iranian fronts on conditions unfavorable to their long-term security. And they need to go back on offense against this ring of fire that Iran has created on its borders. And so if Hamas is just never going to say yes to any ceasefire deal, but Israel is going to take increasing missile and rocket fire from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen, while Iran races forward with its nuclear weapons program, Israel has to fight back. And I think that's what you're seeing them do now.
Rich, you said prepare for the maximum response on behalf of Iran. You saw what they did back in April. A lot of those drones shot from the sky with the help of the Americans, the Jordanians, and the others. Times of Israel headline today, Israel could preemptively strike Iran if intelligence shows attack is imminent. Would you expect that?
I would support it. I would advise it. I think that the Israeli response, the muted response last time we saw this in April, contributes now to the Supreme Leader's feeling that America is constraining Israel. Israel will not respond if it attacks in an escalated way like we saw in April. So therefore, either a preemptive strike or a very large retaliatory strike is in order to restore deterrence. Bill, I think the most important lesson here is we're talking about how to defend Israel. We're not talking about how to deter the threat long term. That requires consequences. What is the consequence the White House is willing to impose on Iran today? End the sanctions relief? Crack down on the oil sales? Endorse a retaliatory strike by Israel? Do anything of this nature? Or is it just about defending against the threat and still pressuring Israel to back down and get some sort of ceasefire? If it's the latter, we are going to endorse continued escalation and conflict in the Middle East.
That's a great point. Jillian?
Well, what about, if Israel is fighting against Hezbollah and Lebanon to the north, and then they're fighting a broader regional war offset by that, also taking direct hits from Iran at the same time, potentially, is there any chance the United States does not become more involved on the ground?
My working assumption is if a U.S. base or interest is targeted by Iran or one of its proxies, the U.S. military will respond forcefully. I think that is a contingency that CENTCOM is prepared for. The Israelis have never asked us to fight its wars. I don't think they're asking us to do that now. But they do ask us to support them in fighting back against terrorist enemies here. And so there may need to be some severe consequences in Lebanon against Hezbollah, a force of 200,000 missiles, rockets, and drones. We used to believe Hezbollah was the deterrent for Israel going after Iran's nuclear weapons program. Now we see Iran acting as Hezbollah's deterrent, trying to save its own ring of fire. That's why they're threatening this all-out attack from within Iran, not just outside.
All right, what does President Biden do? All right, we're waiting for that Situation Room 5 hours from now. That meeting scheduled for 2:15 Eastern Time today. Rich, thank you for your time. Out of Chicago, Rich Goldberg today. Thanks.
Thanks, Rich.